Guys, we're on to part 3 of a 3-part series discussing the top 30 heavyweights currently active in the sport. By the time this goes up, parts 1 and 2 will have been up for a day or so. Hopefully you guys will have checked those out and let me know your thoughts on those ratings. But without further ado, I'll crack on. At number 10, I've gone for Lucas Browne. Now, first and foremost, let me say, I know Lucas Browne is serving some sort of ban at present, but I understand that it's an extremely short-term ban and that Lucas Browne will be back this year. As a result, I thought rather than posting a rankings without him and having to redo it when he becomes active, I'm going to post a video now which includes Lucas Browne. I rate Ruslan Chagayev, at least I certainly did before his fight with Lucas Browne. And for me, Lucas Browne really performed very, very well in that fight. He showed excellent heart, excellent chin. And I thought, on the whole, he was the better boxer in there, despite the fact he won by knockout. Obviously, that fight has been marred substantially by the performance-enhancing drugs claims. That's very controversial. I won't go into that in too much further detail because this isn't the video for it. But Lucas Browne, for me, put in a career-high performance that night. There's no right or wrong with how to position him in this list, really, with the sort of unknown performance-enhancing drugs element. But I've gone for it at number 10. One place ahead of Lucas Browne at number 8. Sorry, at number 9 even. I've got Joseph Parker. Joseph Parker's got some good bits and pieces of form on his resume. You know, he beat Cali Meehan, Jason Petaway, Jakob Saglam, one or two others. But the standout piece of form, and the piece of form that really propels him into the top 10 for me, was his recent win over Carlos Takam. You know, on this list I've rated Takam 18. Prior to that loss to Parker, Takam was borderline top 10 for me, certainly top 12 or 13. And Parker's gone out, he's done a job on him. It was a tight fight, competitive. Parker showed in that fight he's still got a lot to work on, but nevertheless, he won, definitely. And the victory over Carlos Takam over 12 proves that he's worthy of inclusion inside the top 10. At number 8, a controversial choice I know, David Haye. And before I start with David Haye, let me say I'm not picking David Haye here purely based on the fact of his wins over Mark Demori and Arnold Jarjar, because clearly wins over that level of opposition is barely enough to put you in the top 50, let alone the top 10. But David Haye has got some very strong historic form on his resume. You know, he beat Nikolai Valuev, he beat John Ruiz, there's other names on there as well. Now, I know other fighters have beaten names historically, like Tony Thompson or like Ruslan Chagayev. But the difference with those guys is they've suffered losses more recently. Whereas David Haye has come back, has shown recent wins, admittedly at a lower level. And, you know, hasn't really taken the losses other than a semi-disappointing performance against Vladimir Klitschko. So I've included David Haye at number 8. Basically on the fact that he's got very strong previous form, being a world champion obviously, and has shown that he's still in some sort of nick in his recent fights. Controversial, I know. I think it'd be doing a discredit to his previous form to have him outside of the top 10 at this stage. Number 7, Anthony Joshua. Wins over Charles Martin, wins over Dominic Breazeale. You know, the form is not clearly proven because a lot of the guys Joshua's been in with have been unknown, untested fighters. Sorry, let me rephrase that. It's not that they've been unknown or untested. It's that because they've been unbeaten, we're unclear how good they are. You know, Joshua's best wins, Charles Martin, Dillian White, Dominic Breazeale. You know, guys like Dillian White, Charles Martin, it's very unclear whether those are credible wins, uncredible wins, you know, etc. So it's hard to really rank Joshua higher than 7th until he faces, you know, a Carlos Takam or a Bryant Jennings or, you know, someone of that nature who's a bit more of a fully exposed and known quantity on world level. But nevertheless, I spoke about Charles Martin in my last video, and Charles Martin was a guy who I rated in the top 10 after his win of Glasgow, and Joshua beat Martin in definitive style, so Joshua enters the list at number 7 for me. At number 6, Kubrat Pulev. Pulev's got some decent wins on his record. Tony Thompson, Alexander Dimitrenko, Ustinov, recently Derek Chisora. Well, I thought he looked really good against Derek Chisora. You know, there's some questions about whether Pulev has the versatility and has the sort of power and size to dominate at the top level of the sport. But he is a superb boxer. He brings a tricky style, and what he does very, very well. So I've got Kubrat Pulev on the basis of his wins over Thompson, Chisora, Ustinov. I've got him at number 6. There's not too many heavyweights. If you say, who are your best 3 wins? There's not too many heavyweights active in the sport who you could say have 3 better wins than Kubrat Pulev against those names. So that's why I put him so high. At number 5, and this is where I start talking about the fighters who currently are at the very top of the heavyweight division. And number 5 is Luis Ortiz. Ortiz, his resume isn't the deepest, as in there's not the most quantity of grade A wins, but the manner of his wins over Tony Thompson, and perhaps more impressively Bryant Jennings, show that this is a guy who deserves to be very, very much towards the top of the list. Looked deadly against both of those opponents. 2 very awkward, very durable guys, and he stopped them both. Fair play to Luis Ortiz for that. He's going to be a tough guy to match. There's not going to be too many people out there wanting to fight him. He fights Ustinov next, and for me, Ortiz's form means he definitely has to be in the top 5. So I've got him at number 5. Number 4, Deontay Wilder. Deontay Wilder, the WBC champion. He's fought a lot of opponents who have actually proved better than initially anticipated after the fight with Wilder. Johan Depar, his biggest win came after he lost to Wilder. Eric Molina, perhaps his biggest win came after he lost to Deontay Wilder. Malik Scott, perhaps his biggest wins have come after he lost to Deontay Wilder. So a lot of the fights that Wilder had that perhaps looked really terrible at the time maybe aren't so bad looking back in hindsight. And wins over Malik Scott, who I've got, I think I had him at number 13. Johan Depar, who I had in the top 20. Bermain Stavern, who I had in the top 20. Those sort of wins for me mean that Wilder is a top 5 heavyweight. Clearly, what we're yet to see him take on is a fellow elite heavyweight, the fellow top 5 heavyweight. But, that was a fight that would have been made with Alexander Povetkin, and unfortunately, due to unforeseen circumstances, as we know, that fight got cancelled. Speak of the devil, at number 3 I've got Povetkin. Now, I wanted to include Povetkin because there seems to be a large amount of grey area over the situation with Povetkin at present. Certain people saying Povetkin's guilty as sin. Certain people saying Povetkin's innocent. What I know is that he's not been banned as far as I'm aware, so as a result I've included him. And Povetkin does have a very strong and deep resume in the context of today's heavyweight division. Marius Wok, Mike Perez, Carlos Takam, Manuel Char, Marco Huck, Ruslan Chagayev, Eddie Chambers. It's fair to say, like many of the other fighters in the top 10, Povetkin maybe lacks a win over the current top 5, but Povetkin's a very, very good fighter on his day. He carries a lot of power. He's beaten a lot of very, very good fighters over the years, and it's such a shame that Wilder fight hadn't happened, but Povetkin, for me, very, very definitely towards the top of the division. At number 2, Vladimir Klitschko. I know he recently took a big loss, but it's so easy to forget the 10 years of dominance. People saying he's faded. Well, he wasn't faded in more recent fights against the likes of Bryant Jennings, against the likes of Kubrat Pulev, other top names who relatively recently were dispatched by Klitschko. Pulev in particular, that was not too long ago. Klitschko looked at his devastating best in that fight. Going back a few more years, Alexander Povetkin, who I've rated number 3 on this list, couldn't win a round off Vladimir Klitschko. David Haye, really, really soundly beaten by Vladimir Klitschko when they fought. Klitschko, for me, was a top pound-for-pound fighter before his recent loss. Obviously, his position takes a few knocks. Obviously, questions now emerge about his continuing position. But you don't go from being number 1 for 10 years and a top pound-for-pound fighter to being an unranked heavyweight. And I think the only place for Vladimir Klitschko is number 2. With that in mind, it's very obvious who the number 1 heavyweight is. Look, there's no point in really going into depth about Tyson Fury's previous wins. Chisora, Steve Cunningham, Christian Hamer. the fact of the matter is that Tyson Fury is the man who beat the man. Tyson Fury went out and beat Vladimir Klitschko. Beat him in good fashion. Beat a heavyweight who nobody else could beat. Beat a heavyweight who'd reigned supreme for 10 years. And because of that, Tyson Fury is the #1 rated heavyweight. People try and argue, if people try and argue for anyone else, as far as I'm concerned, they're not making a rational argument, because there can only be one #1. And for me, the man who just soundly beat Vladimir Klitschko is the only option. Let me know your thoughts, guys. This completes 3 separate videos. It's been a bit of a slog, but completes the 3 separate videos. Leave your comments below. Do you agree or disagree with the rankings? Do you enjoy these videos? Do you hate these videos? Let me know your feedback. Let me know your lists. Comment them below. If you've enjoyed it, please hit the thumbs up button. I will review these at the end of the year, maybe starting next year. So please hit subscribe so you can check out my future stuff. Thanks for watching.